Hello again, and welcome to Wake Up America Ministries. And we take this opportunity today to speak to you about the second battle that is spoken of in the Bible during the tribulation period. Last week, remember, we talked about the war of Gog and Magog and how they come against Israel, and the Lord intervenes on Israel's behalf and conquers those armies. And today, we're going to be talking about the Battle of Armageddon. We hear the word Armageddon thrown around and mentioned a lot. So today, I hope that we're going to be able to provide you some clarity um, on how these events are going to take place and what to expect. There's a lot of back and forth here today, from Daniel to Zechariah and then to Revelation. Um, for a lot of people, it can be kind of confusing and overwhelming. So today, we're going to try to keep this as simple as possible to give you a better understanding of what this war is going to entail and how things are going to play out. Um, anyway, so as you remember in prophecy, there's a kingdom that is going to be, I guess, formed by the Antichrist and the false prophet. The 10 nations, the 10 nation alliance that's going to be formed out of the revised Holy Roman Empire. So what's going to happen? We're going to start with this, and I'm not sure if Daniel 11 takes place first or Revelation 16. So regardless of how this goes, one may happen before the other, but I'm just trying to do the best that I can here. However it happens is up to the Lord entirely. But anyway, we'll start with Daniel 11, and we're going to read two verses 40 and 41. And it says, and he shall enter also into the, well, let me back up, verse 40. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. And then verse 41 says, he shall enter also into the glorious land, which that would be Israel, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. And of course, Ammon is Jordan. And when it's talking about at the time of the end, the king of the north, that's going to be the armies of the Antichrist. Okay, now if you remember in prophecy, it talks about three of the nations that are part of the 10 nation alliance are going to rebel and fight against the Antichrist. This is that battle that's going to be taking place here. And then we know that the king of the south, which is very likely going to be Egypt, was there south of Israel. So anyway, so now we're going to go from here, and we're going to go over to Revelation 16, and we're going to be reading verses 12 through 16. All right, it says, and the sixth angel, well, let me back up before I read this. So remember in Revelation, there's the judgments. There's the seven seals, the seven trumpets, and the seven vials, and all of these are judgments. 21 judgments that'll be coming out of the tribulation period. Most of these will be in the last half, the 3.5 years, which is called the Great Tribulation. So anyway, so verse 12 says, and the sixth angel, this is during the vials, or the bowls, as some people refer to them as, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth, and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked, and they shall see his shame. And verse 16 says, and he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. Okay, so what is happening here is, and I had to do uh, a lot of googling. I did a lot of reading, and some study Bibles that I have, and a book that John Hagee wrote actually. And the way most of them explain it is that this battle that we read about in Daniel, chapter 11, between the armies of the north and the this armies of the south, this battle is going to take place. And while this is happening, that the armies of the east, well, and it goes on to say later on the north and the east, but this verse mentions the east, that they're going to start forming together as the Euphrates River is dried up. Now we know that there are many plagues throughout the tribulation time, and of these plagues, there is drought is mentioned, and something else that comes to knowledge, and I heard some uh, prophecy teachers speak on this, was that there are many dams on the Euphrates River, and that these dams can actually be used. You know what a dam can do? They can actually cut off the water flow to parts of the rivers that they're on. So it could be that it could be drought that causes the Euphrates River to dries up. It could be that because of the drought that these other countries they cut off the water flow because they need the water for themselves, and then parts of it will dry up, and it will allow the armies of the east, and many interpret the armies of the east being China, which is very possible. I'm not going to sit here and tell you today that it is, because I'm going to be honest with you, I can't give you that for a sure thing. So, but there is other passages where it talks about there'll be a 200 million man army. Well, China can easily fit that bill, but they're not the only ones. So I'm not going to tell you it's China. I'll let you draw your own conclusions there. But anyway, so then what's going to happen is that during this time of war, the armies of the north and the south, they are going to be battling in and around Jerusalem. Okay, now this is where we have to cut back over to Zechariah. Well, hold on. Let me read one more from Daniel. This is Daniel 11:44. It says, "But tidings out of the east." This is those armies that we just spoke about. "But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him," talking about the Antichrist, because right now he's fighting armies of the south. So he's already got one thing going on, and then he realizes something else is about to happen. So anyway, so he's troubled. It says, "Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many." And so we know that this place that they're going to gather to battle is called Armageddon. And so what's going to happen is during this war, and this is where we're going to go to Zechariah, and this is what Zechariah says. This is verses 1 through 3 from chapter 14. It says, "Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. And the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city." And then here we go. So now, before we read verse 3, I want to paint this picture. The armies of the north and armies of the south, they're fighting each other, and basically you got Israel kind of caught in the middle. So the land of Israel becomes a battleground, and then namely we know that the devil, the Antichrist, he wants to place his name where? In the city of Jerusalem, because God, it says, "I have placed my name there." So he wants it. So it appears here that they are on the verge of capturing Jerusalem. And it says here, it says, half the city shall fall. All right. But then verse 3 says, it says, "Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle." All right. So we have here that Israel looks like it's about to fall. Now this is kind of been, I've heard a few prophecy teachers actually say this is going to be another almost like a Holocaust event. It's going to be terrible for Israel. It's going to be very bad. But then we're going to go over here to Revelation 19. So bear with me. I know we're doing a lot of flipping today, but we have to we have to go to these places so we can get a clear picture of how this kind of all shakes out. So this is Revelation 19, 11 through 15. Excuse me. So there's a lot happening. A lot of this is happening very quickly, kind of at the same time. And it says, "And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, and he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean." And it says in verse 15, "And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords." All right, so now we know that there's going to be a great cry that's going to come out of Israel, namely Jerusalem, because it appears that they are about to be defeated, completely overrun, and wiped out. But we know this, that the Jews are God's chosen people. The people of Israel are God's chosen people. All right, so now this is what's going to happen, is we have the Lord and his armies coming out of heaven on white horses to save Jerusalem. All right, now we're going to pick this back up in verse 4 of Zechariah chapter 14, and it says, and we're going to read through verse 12, so we had a lot of reading today. But anyway, this is what it says. And it says, "And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south." All right, so this mountain, the Mount of Olives, when Jesus places his feet on it, the mountain is going to literally split. Now, some of the things I read said it's going to be like a great earthquake. And it goes on, it says, "And you shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azel. Yea, you shall flee, like as you fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah king of Judah. And the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with thee. And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night. But it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. And it shall be in that day that living waters shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one." All right, so now we're going to skip down we're just going to skip down to verse 12. And it says, "And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem." It says, "Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. And it shall come to pass in that day that a great tumult from the Lord shall be among them, and they shall lay hold every one on the hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor." In other words, they're going to turn on themselves. And it says, "And Judah also shall fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered." And it goes on. So anyway, so Jesus is going to come down on a white horse with the armies of heaven. He's going to put his feet on the Mount of Olives, and then he's going to defeat these armies that are in the valley of Armageddon, or the valley of Megiddo, also known as the valley of Jehoshaphat, and it may even have a few other names. All right, so Jerusalem is going to be liberated. Now in there's going to be this great earthquake. There's going to be great devastation. There's going to be literally a river flowing from the mountains where Jesus just placed his feet. All right, so it's going to be fresh water flowing both sides of the mountain. All right, now what's going to happen? Now we go back to Revelation 19. Let me get it. It's getting a little dark on us, but this is Revelation 19, verse 20 and 21. It says, "And the beast was taken." Now we know the beast is just another name for the Antichrist, right? "And the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone." Okay, now that's not the end yet. So, well, let's go to 21. We'll go ahead and read 21. It says, "And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse," talking about the Lord, "which sword proceeded out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh." All right, so we see the Antichrist here and the false prophet. Essentially, they're taken captive and they're cast alive into the lake of fire. All right, so what happens to Satan? Well, we know that at this time it says, and this is chapter 20, verses 20, and then verses 1 through 3, and it says, "And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand." So this is an angel. This is not God doing this. This is just an angel. One angel having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that he must be loosed a little season. So we have this great battle that's going to take place um, right there at the end of the tribulation period. The armies are going to be defeated, and then Satan is going to be bound, and the millennial reign of Christ for 1,000 years will be established, and it'll reign. There'll be peace on earth for 1,000 years. All right, so folks, that's just a real short, nuts and bolts, kind of straight to the point message for you today to kind of chew on and think about. Uh, a lot of back and forth there, but you can take these scriptures, you can write them down, study them out for yourself when you have time to actually kind of really get into them and meditate on them, and just let the Lord show you. And again, just remember this, folks. You said, well, hopefully we're not going to be here at the church. Well, I believe we will not be, but, you know, all things in the Lord's timing, of course. So, anyway, just remember this. Jesus is coming soon. These things that we've spoke of over the last couple of weeks, they will take place, and you can rest assured that as we speak today, that all of these things are already in the works. We mentioned it last week that alliances have already been formed. We can see that in the news. Turkey and Syria and Iran and Russia, all these armies to the north, they're very friendly with each other now. You got Turkey, they want to establish the Ottoman Empire again. Iran wants to establish its own caliphate again. And of course, there's a gentleman over there in France who's spearheading a lot of this stuff up. Now, I'm not saying that he's the Antichrist. I'm not saying that. Emmanuel Macron, keep an eye on what he's doing over there, because he is actually wanting to form his own version of NATO within the European Union. So, folks, there's a lot happening. We just don't have the time to talk about it all today. But anyway, just remember this. Jesus is coming soon. Be ready for his coming. Find you a church. If you're not in church, find you a church that you're, Bible teaching church. They don't water it down. They don't salt it down. They teach the truth. And of course, we'd invite you to the Rock Worship Center as always. So thank you again. We'll see you next week. We love you.